Just putting out this addenda video to bring up a few things that I failed to mention in the original video because I'm super professional and thorough. This first topic I did mention in the Oblivion video, but I should have mentioned it again for the Morrowind video. One thing that I really love that Morrowind added is chance for spells to fail. I feel like that's a better representation of someone taking their first steps into learning how to wield magic than simply the inefficiency of the magicka use. And chance for spell failure also gives you a greater incentive to improve your skills or even make use of weaker spells. Your chance to fail is obviously far less. And it also adds tension to combat encounters. So yeah, I really think that chance for spells to fail was a major improvement to the game. Even though I know most people are going to sound crazy and disagree with me on that. Most people are going to say it's just an irksome system, just like chance to miss with melee weapons and ranged weapons is irksome, but I enjoy them. I'm the type of person who believes that the statistics in a role-playing game should be far more important than player ability. The second topic that I said I would mention but failed to bring up is the reputation system in Morrowind. I touched upon it vaguely, but I didn't really get into the details. So Morrowind stripped down the reputation system that Daggerfall had. In Daggerfall, completing a quest more often than not worsened and improved your reputation with half a dozen or so factions at once. So, if you completed a quest for the Mages Guild, it would improve your reputation, it would improve the disposition of NPCs in factions allied with the Mages Guild, and you would take a disposition hit with factions that are enemies with the Mages Guild. And to me, it really made it feel as though you were taking a particular side, whether you were even aware of your doing so or not. And in Morrowind, joining factions marginally improves or worsens the disposition of NPCs who belong to rival or allied factions. But in Daggerfall, as I said, just completing quests did the same thing. Completing quests improved your standing with NPCs of allied factions and worsened your standing with NPCs of rival factions. So that by virtue of your good standing with a particular faction, let's just take the Underking for instance, you may not be able to speak to Manamarco, the King of Worms. And here's a good example. In my second playthrough of Daggerfall, I did something or other to upset the members of the Fighters Guild in a particular city. And it may have even been the Fighters Guild in general, I'm not sure, I didn't actually check. But at the very least, members of the Fighters Guild in this particular city were upset with me, and they wouldn't even speak to me, and I think that's great. And I know what some people are going to say, well, how can you think it's great that NPCs won't even talk to you and you don't even know why? Well, people can be upset with you without even telling you why. And if they're so upset that they don't even want to talk to you, well, obviously they're not going to tell you what you did. They're going to expect that you're aware of what you've done to them or the group to which they belong. That's, causing so much tension and hostility. So I touched upon this in the first video, the first video covering Morrowind, the simplification of the Elder Scrolls Part 2. I talked about how NPC dispositions were not really relevant. Like, it doesn't really matter what you do to NPCs in Morrowind. Like, their disposition isn't really permanently affected. You can always just bribe them with gold. So, in addition to totally revamping the disposition system in Morrowind so that you can't cheaply and easily sway people with, bribes or the charm spell effect, I would have also made it so that completing quests for allied or rival factions impacts the dispositions of NPCs just as it did in Daggerfall. I think it was a great system, and I'm not sure why they felt it was a good idea to remove it. As I said within my video talking about the simplification of the series through Oblivion, Bethesda should have exacerbated conflicts between organizations and not relegated them to irrelevance. To achieve this, they should have introduced more factions into Morrowind and enabled the player to join the Kemonotong, House Dagoth, and the Dark Brotherhood. And joining any faction should have major repercussions beyond just a disposition hit. And as I said, the disposition system needs to be revamped so that you can't just overcome the disposition hit just by paying them 30 or 40 septims. But here are some of the major repercussions that I would have liked to have seen. If you're known to be in the Thieves Guild, you shouldn't be accepted into the Fighters Guild so long as it's under the leadership of Svioring Hardheart, and vice versa. You shouldn't be accepted into the Thieves Guild until you've killed Siori, as each organization would obviously be suspicious of your motive for joining. And Thieves Guild members should also be targeted by the Kimono Tong and attacked if their membership is known. So they should send random assassins, and if you enter the house of a Kimono Tong member, they should try to kill you, when you're behind closed doors. Obviously, they shouldn't be, attacking you in public and all that. But, if you're in, like, the council club, for instance, in Balmora, the Kimono Tong should instantly try to kill you if you're a member of the Thieves Guild when you go in there, in my opinion. As for joining House Dagoth, if your character is known to have joined House Dagoth, they should be attacked by everyone who knows that, except for dreamers and members of the Kimono Tong. Members of the Mages Guild probably shouldn't be admitted to Great House Telvanni. Membership in both the Imperial Cult and the Tribunal Temple should be impossible. And we could come up with other examples as well, but these are just some of the ones I've come up with off the top of my head. But even if Bethesda didn't want to restrict faction membership, which I feel is pretty obvious, I think it's pretty evident that they didn't want to impose any restrictions whatsoever. They wanted players to be able to complete every single quest within a single playthrough, with the exception of the Great House quests. At the very least, they could have retained the disposition effects upon NPCs of allied factions and rival factions when completing quests. And one final thing that I want to bring up that I do like about Morrowind is that I like how dodge was replaced with unarmored. The dodge skill in Daggerfall granted a bonus to avoid hits, irrespective of how much armor you're wearing, whereas Morrowind gave you a bonus to avoid hits based upon your unarmored skill if you weren't wearing armor, which in my opinion makes more sense. Because if you're wearing armor, you're obviously less nimble, you're less capable of dodging a blow. And you obviously have less interest in dodging an attack anyway than a person who's not wearing any armor whatsoever. So I like that change. It's seemingly minor, but given the way that dodge worked in Daggerfall, it's actually a pretty significant change because, as I said, a character in full Daedric armor in Daggerfall, they're just as capable of dodging an attack as a character without any armor whatsoever. So I think it's a good change. Like I said, it's more believable, and it actually gives players a reason not to wear armor whatsoever. And on a very final note, I'd like to reiterate that these videos aren't exhaustive. I'm not listing off all the things I like and dislike about the games I'm covering. I'm simply covering the issues that are most important to me, and when I do reference things that are not in and of themselves important, I'm referencing them to help illustrate a larger point.